I remembered. So here we go. All right, let's record. Okay. All right, any of you. Okay, I can't see you since I only have one screen. So if you have a question, let me know. If you can't see anything, let me know. All right. The rise of fascism. Here we go. And you learn right in the beginning, so think about it. We are uh, in the Great Depression. It has crossed the Atlantic into Europe, into a part of the world that is war-torn, to say the least. That's had a century and a half of conflict. You have different types of leaders. You have nationalism. You have heavily industrialized places. You have just a lovely recipe for answers. And then if you think about yesterday's lecture about when people feel like they have no answers, they are more easily radicalized. So the stage is set for these two gentlemen right here. All right. The fasces, which is a bundle of rods tied around an axe, was a symbol of authority. It was also used for corporal and capital punishment. Lovely. I'm sure I didn't pronounce that correctly, but I'm assuming, based upon presence in this slide, that that's where fascism came from. This government of authority. Here are our fascist countries for today. Can anybody name them? Anybody? Remember, I can't see you. So, anybody? No? Come on, it's 5 of you. You should be brave. You should talk. It's just me.
It's Nazi Germany, Italy, Soviet Russia, and Spain, I think.
Very good. Yes, Spain. Good. All right. Fascist authoritarian governments were committed to existing social orders. So they are conservative by nature. They are traditional based. Fascists opposed the popular participation in government. They did not like democracy. They felt that democracy and that choices undermined unity. They saw it as divisive. Fascists are uber nationalists. They are in it for the country. Everybody should love the country, but just love it the way I tell you to love it. That's kind of what a fascist is. Democracy is talking itself to death, Mussolini said. The people do not know what they want. They do not know what is best for them. There's too much foolishness, too much lost motion. Democracy is beautiful in theory, in practice it's a fallacy. You in America will see that someday. So this was their belief, that democracy led to inactivity. Democracy led to nothing being done, whereas decisive leadership gets things done. That's their rationale for this. The menace of, gosh, there's a great movie poster. Okay. Fascists support a single powerful leader, and they allow only one political party. They go out of their way to remove rivals, obstacles, any sort of opposition. I mean, can you think of any contemporary leader that has a history or has been accused of removing political rivals? Anybody?
Putin.
Who?
Putin. Vladimir Putin.
Yes, Putin. That's correct. Okay. Fascists are ultra nationalistic. They're willing to use war to achieve national goals. Most, not all, but most fascists subscribe to the idea of social Darwinism, that there's a master race theory. There's an idealized member of their society. Fascists attempt to control the political, the intellectual, and the social lives of the individual citizens. So they control the media, they control what's in the textbooks, what's taught, what's not taught, what's available to be read, what's not. They control every facet of the population's life in order to obtain their goal. They support capitalism, but a top-down kind of capitalism. Like they are okay with, the five of you or if more of you have come opening up your own business, but you're gonna have to listen to them with respect to how it goes. So it's definitely not a free market, but they're not opposed to private enterprise. They rely on modern technology and communication. In the 30s, it was radio. Today, it'd be the internet or just cellular technology in general. Again, if you have any questions, please pause me. Let me know. Fascists use education to mold citizens and to demonize scapegoats and enemies. So in the curriculum, in the schools, in the structure, they are kind of building the model citizen, and they are pointing out, whether it be in lessons or textbooks, the others, other groups, the less desirables, and they're using those, as you see here, either to demonize them, like to dehumanize them, or to make them the reason your life is like this, to sort of deflect responsibility, to put the onus on someone else. So it's all structured and very organized and very well thought out. The Hitler Youth Movement was formed for the express purpose of creating loyal subjects to the state. 3 million boys and girls ages 10 and older were enrolled. Yes, they were born to die for Germany. They were indoctrinated with what to believe and what to speak. They were also given basic physical training, weapons training, and they were also there's a History Channel kind of series about World War II in color, and it's all from 8mm home movies of Germans. And it's from when Hitler is first rising to power and what life is like in Germany, and how there are parts of Germany that have no idea there's a war going on, all the way to the end, to like 1945. But in part, if I can find it, I'd love to be able to show it. I need to start showing stuff during lunch. But there's one part where it shows there are camps. There's a boys' camp and a girls' summer camp, and they are kept segregated. And this one mother went to go get her daughter, because one of the things that Hitler wanted them to do was to make little more Germans. So they'd come together and they would have sex. And so you had a lot of young teenage girls being pregnant for the fatherland. They were called Hitler moms and Hitler brides because that was all part of their goal. And I thought that was, from a purely historical standpoint, fascinating, and then equally as a parent, just gross. Okay. Sorry, not gonna lie to you. Fascists use violence to achieve their goals, regardless of individual rights. Again, it's the state over the individual. Fascist states were a radical revolt against liberal commitment to freedom, to peaceful progress, the idea of mass politics. Fascist governments are probably oligarchical at their largest. There's going to be one central leader with his well, the people we're talking about are men. There may have been female fascist rulers, but I don't think that would even fly if you think about the definition and what seems to be their ideal. I don't know if a female figure would work, and we can talk about that. But small group, small government, small number of voices driving the many. The first fascist state emerging in Italy after World War I, and then Germany, and then Spain. Russia, I guess under Stalin, they become more fascistist. Italy's the first one though, and then Hitler loves him some Mussolini, and he goes down to Italy. You'll see, it's a love fest. Okay, many Italians were frustrated with the Treaty of Versailles as well, even though Italy helped the Allies win. They did not seek that territorial expansion that they wanted. They did not get the compensation of like this part. This is what they wanted, is this part right here. And they wanted more land here, and they did not get it. And so they felt slighted. Italians faced economic crises like most of the world, and especially like most post-World War I countries in Europe. Upper and middle class Italians feared a revolt. They feared communism. They feared, them losing what they had to this group. So there was that kind of paranoia going on at the time. Benito Mussolini organized a veterans group. He organized veterans into a fascist political movement. He used violence to intimidate socialists. Again, it's the idea of collectivism, the idea of not really, I guess equality is just not part of this process whatsoever. In the fascist state, the individual is not suppressed, but rather multiplied. Just as in a regiment, a soldier is not weakened, but multiplied by the number of his comrades. The fascist state organizes the nation, but it leaves sufficient scope to individuals. It has limited useless. So in other words, the way they describe it and the way they are talking about fascism is, yes, Campbell or Sam or Kai, you as an individual may not have the rights to which you are accustomed, but because there are so many more of you, then you're really not powerless. That's the argument. There's power in numbers. The numbers are more important than the individual. This is the many, not the one. This is the antithesis of Enlightenment thinking. Mussolini promised to revive Italy's economy and rebuild its armed forces. Again, remember, it's economics and using military to achieve agendas. In 1922, fascists criticized the liberal government, and then they marched on Rome, where the king asked Mussolini to form a new government, interestingly enough. He created a one-party dictatorship. He ended freedom of the press. He fixed, which means he rigged elections, not like fixed like made them better. He rigged elections. He ruled by decree, which basically means whatever Mussolini said became law. And he arrested any and all political opponents. Any opposition was arrested. Outside the state, there can be neither individuals nor groups, political party associations. Therefore, fascism is opposed to socialism, which confines the movement of history within the class struggle and ignores the unity of classes established. Okay. Il Duce, as he was known, demanded Italians accept his leadership without question, but he was never able to control the Catholic Church, nor could he control the army, which I find interesting, actually, that a fascist could not control his army. Well, I'm just curious if that goes back to the whole, there's a cultural or historical tradition back to Rome. I'm just wondering. He created a corporatist economy. So he believed that capitalists and workers must be forced to cooperate. So basically, we have industry, we have private enterprise, but it's almost like as best I understand it, it's almost like a command capitalist economy, if that makes any sense. I don't know. He organized 22 state corporations to run the Italian economy. He included employers, employees, and government arbitrators. Okay, right here. So there's this, yeah, good, right here. So there is private enterprise. And in a corporatist state, the private enterprise runs the economy. You can make your stuff, sell your stuff. If there's a situation where the country needs something or we think your production is lacking, then the government will step in and kind of guide the industry that way. Otherwise, they step back. But it's only like an as-needed kind of intervention that the government steps in if they feel the economy is slipping and needs like I guess a shot in the arm as opposed to a shot in the head. But
in reality, was it really as needed, or did the government just control it?
Well, again, that's a great question, and I'm assuming that was Campbell. I can't see anybody. I hate this. Since he was ruling by decree, he could say whatever he wanted. Our country needs this. So yeah, while on paper it may read one way, yeah, it's a very good point. At the end of the day, a fascist ruler, an autocratic ruler, is going to do what he wants to do. Oh, look, he's a cat guy. Okay. Corporations outlawed strikes. They set wages. They set prices. So again, it's this combination of private ownership with state control over decisions. So, Sam, you can own a company, but I'm going to tell you what you're going to pay your wages, your workers, and I'm going to tell you what price you're going to sell your goods for. So, yeah, this is a unique way of running an economy, and then you can kind of see why it leads to problems, I would think. There's no evidence that Italy's standard of living, which is lowest of the major powers, has been raised one jot or tittle since Il Duce came to power. And that's from Life magazine in 1938. Now we're going to go to Germany. Now, they attempted democracy after World War I, but the Treaty of Versailles and what Germany was given through that treaty, as well as the Great Depression, really took a bite and put a dent in any kind of talk of democracy in Germany. Germany made its first annual reparation payment to the Allies in 1921. So 2 years after the Treaty of Versailles is signed, Germany makes its first payment. And again, it's a post-war economy. Your labor force is decimated by injury and death. Making these payments was very difficult for this economy. Germany's Weimar Republic refused to pay. They didn't have it, so they refused to pay. So a Franco-Belgian occupation of the Ruhr Valley took place, and the next slide will show you where the Ruhr Valley is. It's one of the heavy natural resource mineral deposit areas in Germany. And it becomes historically significant in the late 1930s with, this guy. So that's where they went. They took that over, which in a way is kind of counterintuitive, because if that's one of the main places for Germany to gather resources to either use and or sell, I guess occupying it, you could sell it yourself, but you're not going to help that country. And those people are French or Belgian because of the helmets. Okay. The Weimar leaders printed money to help stabilize the economy. Okay, printing money, never a good idea. See this wheelbarrow full of money? You're about to see what hyperinflation looks like. God, within the last decade, Zimbabwe suffered hyperinflation, and I don't know the currency, so I'm just going to say for the sake of argument, the Zimbabwe dollar was not accepted in Zimbabwe as currency. That's how devalued the currency was. They would only accept American dollars. Everybody takes American dollars at the end of the day. Venezuela had an issue with their currency too. By printing the money, you're getting, again, this is, value is tied to supply and demand. If there's so much out there, if the market is glutted with cash, its value depreciates. Okay, this guy right here is wallpapering his house with money because that was one of the only things you could do with it. People burned it. They burned the bricks for fuel. True historical story. If you receive, inflation got so bad in the Weimar Republic of Germany that if you received a paycheck for 100 marks and you cashed it at 10 in the morning, by noon it'd only be worth like $80. Like the money just devalued at such an alarming rate, as this next little picture will show you. This is the price of bread. In December of 1920, it was 2.37 marks for a loaf of bread. And then the inflation looks kind of normal. The next year, it's almost 4 marks for a loaf of bread. And then in 1922, it's 163 marks for a loaf of bread. And then by June of 23, it's 1,400 marks for a loaf of bread. And then August, 2 months later of 1923, it is 69,000 marks for a loaf of bread. 1 month later, It is 1.5 million marks. By November, it is, I don't know, 201 trillion marks. Is that correct? For a loaf of bread. No economy is sustainable at that level. None. Printing money. The Confederacy did this during the Civil War. There was Confederate money, and then during the Civil War, to kind of help them fund their war effort, they printed money. And by the end of the Civil War, a bushel of corn went from $2 to $400. But Germany does get help. The Dawes Plan and the Young Plan from 1924 to 1930. The United States sent $2.5 billion in loans to Germany. Germany took that and paid off their allies, and then in turn the allies were able to pay off their debt to the United States. That was the theory. That was the plan. The Dawes Plan stabilized the economy. It kind of cut reparations. It lowered the cost because it sent out loans. And then they asked for more loans to pay for what was needed. And again, remember what happens after the stock market crash. Remember what happened in America at the beginning of the Great Depression. One of the first sectors to react was the banking sector. And they called in on their loans. Well, I doubt very seriously that Germany is going to have $2.5 billion to pay the loans back. So you can kind of see how the Depression really set the stage for the fascism to rise up in Italy and here in Germany. Poop. Same slide. Okay. After 1923, Germany's economy and new democracy do begin to stabilize. The Weimar Republic kind of gets its feet under it. Germany goes through a period of stability, of growth. Germany, actually, ironically, I guess interestingly, and then in the early before the crash in the 1920s, becomes sort of like this liberal, the way we think of liberal, artsy cultural center of Europe. It's the university center. There are Jews there, and they seem to be doing just fine. Obviously, we know there's stuff below the surface, but it's an okay place to live. It's a very kind of progressive place to live in the bulk of the 1920s, post World War I. In the early 30s, the Depression devastates the economy, and just as in Italy, these economic downturns and these struggles lead the German people, just like the Italian people, to question these democratic agencies, these democratic governments, because democracies are, by their nature, and if we're being honest, by design, slow to move. Okay, there's not a whole lot of ready, fire, aim in democracy, for good or for bad. So when it's a crisis, I can understand why people would want a more decisive form of government. However, it's not what they have at the moment. Unemployment in Germany, as you can see, from 1930 to 1932. I'm going to guess that those are in millions. Either that or that's like 30,000, 30 in the thousands. And then you can see, so at 32, it's kind of important. That's right around the time of Mr. Hitler. And then you look at what goes on with the unemployment from 32 to 36, you can kind of see why working class people, why people struggling would like a ruler like him. Or to an extent, any sort of fascist autocratic ruler who says, look, you're going to have bread and you're going to be okay, because they're working. How can anybody be afraid of that guy? The Great Depression and frustrations over the Treaty of Versailles and the Weimar Republic gave Adolf Hitler a path. And it wasn't a straight path, and it wasn't a path that was success, success, success. He lost elections. They didn't get a lot of seats. He tried to have a putsch, an uprising. He gets arrested. You know all the story. So it wasn't like the German people was a groundswell of support. Like 70% of the German people didn't vote for him, voted against him. So it's interesting how he's able to use channels and rise to power, kind of the same way Stalin used channels to rise to power. In the days that followed the surrender, my own fate became known to me. I resolved to go into politics. There he is. His service in World War II kind of gave him his life meaning. He blamed Jews and the Marxists for Germany's loss. I'm not even going to all I know is Deutsche. In 21, he took over a very small party known as the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Nazis. Nazi means National Socialist. That's what it's short for. National Socialism. There's nothing nefarious about Nazi. It's just a word. How they acted, that was nefarious. Okay. Anton Drexler was the founder of the party. Did you know that? I didn't know that until I was reviewing these slides last night. Anyway, okay, I'm a teacher and I'm supposed to promote, I guess, kindness. But Adolf Hitler has a face you want to punch. All right. He was an excellent orator. He could give a speech. And he does. And one of the ways he's able to rise to fame is that he understood marketing. Really, he understood image. He understood the show. And he played to emotions. And he vowed to avenge this Germany's honor. He vowed to make Germany great again. Hitler considered Germans a master race who needed land in Eastern Europe. And this term was used before. Lebensraum was used in previous discussions. This is just like elbow room. It's room to grow. Germany needs Eastern Europe because Eastern Europe was going to be, if you ever read about his great plan, the breadbasket. Eastern Europe was going to be where all the crops were grown to feed this 1,000-year hike that was about to be created. That was his belief. Every manifestation of human culture, every product of art, science, and technical skill which we see before our eyes today is almost exclusively the product, an Aryan creative power, product of Aryan creative power. I was reading this last night, and what stuck out to me was that conversation, the comment that one representative in our government said about how the natives are responsible for, anyway, the whole nativist idea to me. Then, now, the 1820s in America, 1850s and 60s in America, that early part of the 20th century in America. Hitler saw Jews as an inferior race and responsible for Germans' problems. Remember, scapegoating. The German schools were all about scapegoating, and fascist schools are about scapegoating. Struggle for world domination will be fought entirely between us, between Germans and Jews. Even if we drive them out of Germany, they will remain our enemy. There's some foreshadowing. Hitler argued communists were responsible for creating labor unrest, which threatened national unity. So there's his issue. Again, anything that hinders national unity is bad. Okay, and then try and think of all the other groups and organizations and the way previous leaders and kings and queens and prime ministers and premiers and emperors handled those groups that seem to question or wedge, the populace. If you're a fascist, if you're a hyper nationalist, you have to have the collective together. And if they aren't going to be with you, you have to get rid of them. Hitler believed democracy was weak and called for an absolute ruler. That's Führer, as absolute ruler. And sort of the Nazi mantra was ein Volk, ein Reich, ein Führer, one people, one ruler, one Reich, one ruler. And again, Volk or folks, Volkswagen is the people's wagon. That's what it was. So that was sort of their view, that one. Oh, it's like if any of you are watching, I guess it's interestingly, maybe is what are they called? If anybody's watching The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the Gate Smashers or whatever, are they fascists? Anyway. In 1923, Hitler attempted to seize power through a coup. The beer hall putsch failed, and Hitler was arrested. He walked into a beer hall and said, "We're having a revolt." And I don't want to say people laughed at him, but it didn't go well. People were shot, and then he was arrested. There it is. Burger Brow. Keller. Burger Brow. Nice. The National Revolution has broken out. The hall is filled with 600 men. Nobody's allowed to leave. Anyway. The barracks of the Reichswehr and those in the police were occupied. Both have rallied to the swastika. And swastika really is an ancient Egyptian symbol. It predates modernity. Again, I don't know what it stands for. It just seems to me that Hitler thought it would look good. And Goebbels was his media and PR guy, and they just thought it looked good. Image was everything. His trial made him a national figure. He wrote Mein Kampf, which meant my struggle, while he was in prison, and he outlined his beliefs for his view of the world, his view of the German people, or for the German people. In the early 30s, the Depression allowed the Nazi Party to gain support again because Hitler promised better. We're going to make Germany better again. You're going to have a job. You're going to eat. We're going to be great. We're going to be great. We're going to be great again. We're going to be the Germany of Bismarck. Okay, the Reichstag is the German government. And this is what I was talking about before, about how he's the member of a party that isn't overly popular. Look at all these political parties in Germany in 1924 to 28, and notice that their representation actually went down. Okay, I personally believe we should have more. Well, we do. We have like 55 recognized political parties in America, if you look it up. But 2 drive our show, and I think we need to have more voices. That's just me. You can disagree, and that's cool, but I think more choice, in this case, more choice is better. 15 toothpaste? I don't know. Okay. But again, you kind of see where they fall. You've got the centrists, you've got nationalistic people, the German National People's Party, national liberal, progressive liberal, regional, because you're going to have regional areas. Because remember, too, and look at all the smaller parties. Remember, too, Germany is a collection of little states that come together in the 1800s. So you're still going to have local ties and very sort of regional allegiances in the early part of the 20th century. But even like today, I mean, you can be a North Carolinian, a Southerner, an American. I mean, it depends. And then this just shows you the percentages of in the government, how they actually decreased by almost, over half. In 1933, conservative and nationalist Germans supported Paul von Hindenburg's appointment of Hitler as chancellor. So Hindenburg appoints Hitler to a title, to chancellor, and the people and the conservative and nationalists are okay with that because they understand Hitler is a nationalist. He's a conservative. All right.
What does the chancellor do?
In Germany, it's an excellent question. Let's find out. All right. Dun, dun, dun. Feel free, Sam. Anybody else? Role of chancellor in Weimar Republic. Look at that. It was a fairly weak figure during the Weimar Republic. Chancellor is the head of the government and chief executive of Germany, as well as commander in the Chancellor of Germany. Oh, today, the Chancellor is the Chancellor. Today, the Chancellor of Germany, officially the Federal Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany, is the head of the government and chief executive of Germany, as well as commander in chief. That's today. But back then, it did not have the power it has today. I think what we're seeing here, and from 1919 to 1933, it's a very weak, because that's why this year is being mentioned. It was just a title, and I think Hindenburg was okay with it, and other members of the Reichstag were okay with it because it was such a nondescript thing. But somehow, after the Reichstag caught on fire, he blamed communists for it. There is a theory out there that believes that he actually said it, and that gave him, and the Enabling Act gave him temporary dictatorial power. So now we need to go review the Enabling Act and see what that does. I'm assuming it enables him to take charge, which means that, again, if it's a lesser titled position, I don't know how this occurs. So this is a lack of information that bugs me. All right. And it's not as important as to what that role was. It was a lesser role, obviously. What matters is that it gets him in government, because he lost elections and he didn't get elected, and the representation of his party is so small. But this gets him in government, and once he's in, things like this allow him to move up the ladder. Marinus von der Lubbe apparently was accused of starting the fire. And this is, let's see, if public security and order are seriously disturbed or in danger within the German Reich, the president of the Reich may take measures necessary for the restoration. Okay. Intervening if need be with the assistance of the armed forces. For this purpose, he may suspend for a while, in whole or in part, the fundamental rights provided in Articles 114, 15, 17. In other words, if the situation arises, the government can sort of like clamp down, suspend rights, suspend things like habeas corpus, kind of go under a sort of martial law to get things back in order. This goes back to, in Roman times, the word dictator actually meant somebody who came in to fix things. One of the most famous dictators in Roman history was a guy named Cincinnatus. And it was a temporary position. You came in for like 2 months, you fixed it, and then you left. It was just sort of like a stopgap, solve this dilemma, and then let the government take it back again. But what you see happening is dictators seize an opportunity to step in, and they don't leave. Nazis took over the German government, professional organizations, newspapers, and universities because of the Reichstag burnings. This just shows you the structure of the party. There's the Führer, the Chancellery, the Legionstat, okay, blah, 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 on down. Then all the different groups, the SA, the SS, the NSK, the Women's League, the German Women's Organization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. District leaders, county leaders, local, cell, blocks, and then the membership. The NSTD, these are students. And this is the socialist, where is it? The Socialist Motor Corps, interesting. The Security Police, Storm Detachment, SA, that's your stormtroopers. HJ, that's your Hitler Youth. Yeah, so there you go. Women's Welfare Organization, German Labor Front, all of these affiliated groups. Okay, so these are party organizations. These are all Nazi organizations, and these are just associations that are affiliated with them. Special secret police called the Gestapo arrested those opposing Nazi rule. This is sort of the this is the flow chart to determine just how Jewish you were, or sort of like the one drop rule. How little blood is necessary to be considered Jewish enough to lose your property. Nazis persecuted Jews, removed them from state jobs, destroyed property, denying them German citizenship. And this idea is not unique to Germany. If you think about the old imperialism, and I would not I would not hesitate to think that it was used in New Imperialism too, about how race is mixed and who was allowed to be part of the community and not based upon their bloodlines. That is not a Nazi invention. Military and public works spending improved the German economy. By the mid-30s, the economy is starting to improve. It makes Hitler more popular. Their public works. This is what Roosevelt did, FDR, building dams and the Tennessee Valley Authority and trying to all the dams. Most of the dams built in the United States were built during the Depression just to get people working, building roads, things of that sort. That's what he does here. He also begins to violate the conditions of the Treaty of Versailles. The best possible way to bring German people back into work is to set German economic life once through great monumental works. This is true. And that's for anybody. If you want to make a country whole again, then you have to give it hope and you have to give it opportunity. And you have to get it back to work. You have to have big ideas. So in that respect, that's a very normal political approach to running your country. In 1933, he proclaimed his peaceful intentions to the world, but then withdrew from the League of Nations. And he will not be the first country to do that. I'm looking at you, Japan. In 1935, he openly begins rearming Germany. Remember, per the agreements in the Treaty of Versailles, 100,000 troops, no aircraft, no artillery, no submarines. But this is his first violation of that treaty. He unabashedly begins to rearm his country. Oh, by the way, anybody know what happened in Germany in 1936? Or what took place in Germany in 1936?
The Olympic Games.
Yeah, the Olympic Games. So when all this is going on, Germany hosts the Olympics. That was the Olympics of Jesse Owens.
And wasn't like Hitler there when he was doing all his like stuff?
Yeah, because he thought for sure that his athletes were the best.
And they weren't?
Well, no.
Yeah.
Not all of them. German troops entered the demilitarized Rhineland area. That was part that they had to remove troops from. They went back into it. The French went to go take action. Britain said no. You're going to see a lot of this. You're going to see a lot of countries saying no to getting involved in stopping Germany. The 48 hours after the march into the Rhineland were the most nerve-wracking in my life. If the French had then marched into the Rhineland, we would have had to withdraw with our tails between our legs. So basically, excuse me, had the French, had the English interceded with the French and had the French gone in with English help, Germany would have had to have left. It was like a poker hand, and he called their bluff and he won. Why? Why didn't they do anything? He's not supposed to be doing that. Okay, that wasn't rhetorical. All right. Anyway. This was the second violation of the Treaty of Versailles, remilitarizing the demilitarized Rhineland. Remember, if you're typing, I can't see your answers. All I can see is my screen. In 1935, Italy invaded Ethiopia. Remember, the Abyssinian kingdom had kept themselves free of colonization and imperialism up until 1935. This is when that happens, and Hitler offered support to the Italians, and now the German-Italian alliance is created. And remember, no alliances. That's not good either. Britain and France have left us only a collection of deserts. Italy has lost her empire, a fascist empire. Yay. Italy's invasion tested the League of Nations, actually, because now what are they going to do? They had promised collective security. We all go in. We say no. We stop them. But again, They didn't do anything, hoping that by not doing anything, think about this logic, by not doing anything, Italy would be like, okay, I'm good. Anyway, appeasement is going to be the word of the 1930s. By the late 30s, the Allies failed to confront Germany and Italy. Instead, there it is. They followed a policy of appeasement. Just, okay, this will be the last time. Okay, no more, no more. Don't do it again. You know, it's sort of like being a policeman without a gun. You'd be like, stop. Or I'll say, stop again. I mean, like in England, because they don't have any guns. Many British conservatives saw Hitler as a positive force against communism. So this is the other interesting thing. Communism is just a bigger threat, if not a larger threat, to the collective peace of Western Europe than Hitler is. Okay, I don't know how. I don't know how to properly explain this fear of communism that was throughout Western Europe and in the United States. I don't. But it was palpable. You know, from a business standpoint, I could understand, I guess, why the captains of industry wouldn't like it. And nations don't like it because of our entire economic history with mercantilism and this, that, and the other. So the fact that he was a vocal threat to communism kind of bought Hitler. Oh, that's just Hitler. You know what I mean? Like, it kind of bought him a little grace, for lack of a better word, because he was staunchly opposed to communism.
At this point in time, does Germany and Italy together have enough weapons to like beat France or Britain or any of the other big powers?
No, not at all. Because they're just starting. Like, Germany had just started to rearm themselves. In fact, when World War II begins, Admiral Dönitz, who was the head of the German Navy, wanted Hitler to wait 2 more years because they could have built enough submarines to effectively choke England, but Hitler wouldn't wait. So they knew they needed time. And they also knew that the last thing they wanted was to get the United States involved. At the same time, like Hitler, just like in World War I, Hitler really wanted to defeat one side, then focus your attention on the other side, and then go after another and then another. Like, he wanted this empire, but he did not want a multi-front war, ideally. But no, they could not have taken on. No, remember, had the French walked into the Rhineland, he would have had to have left. The United States, Britain, and France focused on domestic issues during the Great Depression. So this is something else that helps Hitler. He's left alone. The rest of the world's dealing with these issues as well, and they're going to focus on their own country's well-being, because you should. And not only that, but remember, after World War I, America kind of turned its back more towards an isolationist America. Europe is still Europe. That's their mess. That's just their history. You know, we're here. We're not part of them anymore. We left them. We're America. So we focus inward. France deals with their issues. Britain deals with their issues, even though they're right next door. Now, France is never, ever, ever going to truly turn its back just because of the last 100 years, but 60 years, whatever. But you still have to address your country's needs. And so they just like, here, just give him this, just make him go away, just make him go away. And that's what happens until there's no place else for him to go. The horrific losses of World War I really took a dent on. That was just one more leg on the table of appeasement. We lost an entire generation to this war. We don't want another one. We still haven't recovered from the first one. The democracies repeatedly underestimated Hitler's thirst for power and conquest. They just didn't quite get it. Either they were unwilling to recognize it, or they just missed it. Okay. I can pick up my dog at 2:30. Okay. And here's our next fascist. In 1936, the Spanish Civil War, Francisco Franco, a fascist, rebelled against the Spanish government. a democracy. Again, when economic troubles exist, democracies are sort of looked at side-eyed. Hitler and Mussolini sent men and materials to help Franco. A squadron of German planes bombed the village of Guernica. I'm sorry, I don't speak Spanish. Guernica, Guernica in Spain, and one of Pablo Picasso, I believe, most famous paintings. Ooh, is this one, and this is his painting of the bombings by German planes in the Spanish Civil War. Also, there's a movie that came out, gosh, I guess it's been over a decade now, called Pan's Labyrinth, which is about a little girl and Pan and this figure, and it takes place and it deals with the Spanish Civil War. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there. And this just kind of shows you the series of acts, how long it takes for the nationalists to defeat the Democrats and for Spain to become a fascist country. From July 36, roughly 3 years. In 3 years, it's fascist, and it remains fascist. Francisco Franco stays in power until 1975. And like, I was 9 and Spain was a fascist country. Like, that's, I had, like, I don't see Spain that way, which makes me want to go study Spain now. So much to study. In 38, Hitler annexed Austria. And this is the Anschluss. This is, Sound of Music. That's what's going on. This has just taken place. There are Germans in Austria. That's what's going on when that movie's taking place, is the annexation of Austria during that time period. So you know. Common blood belongs in a common Reich. There are people in part of Austria who consider themselves German, so Hitler's like, why not? Any other German people anywhere we can get? Violation number 3, the Treaty of Versailles. I don't know. So I guess it's more than 3 strikes and you're out. Hitler focused on acquiring the Sudetenland. That's this brown area right here. There are 3 million German-speaking people there, so he decided to annex that back into Germany because, again, common people, common Reich. And notice that that land is actually ceded, given to Germany in 1938, given to them as a way to not go to war. And then you just see like these are all parts of Poland that are annexed or occupied or annexed to Russia. Poor Poland. Down here is anyway. Czechoslovakia sought to annihilate them. That wasn't true, but that's okay. Chamberlain, Daladier, Hitler, and Del Duce. Never Chamberlain. Okay, these people had an emergency conference in Munich. That's the thing I just referenced a second ago. At the end of this conference, the goal was to negotiate these demands. They do it. They tell Czechoslovakia to give up the Sudetenland. Chamberlain believed he could preserve the peace by appeasing Hitler and giving in to his demands. So basically, Hitler said, "Look, just give me this. I'm good. I don't need anything else." Chamberlain is so desperate to not go to war. Europe is so desperate not to go to war. They're like, "Okay, fine, have it, but you promise." That's it, right?
What countries were these?
Italy, Germany, France, and Great Britain. Chamberlain is Great Britain. Daladier was France. Il Duce is Italy, and Hitler is Germany. The big four real out. Because remember, Russia's still wrestling with its own stuff. Like, Russia's still trying to get a handle on its economy. Stalin's probably one of his 5-year plans by now, purging out people who are against him. Russia's not looking to Europe right now. They want Poland as a buffer. And Hitler picking off those other countries, I'm assuming they were aware of it. I don't think they saw it as a big enough deal. And again, because Hitler didn't like communism, France, Great Britain didn't see a reason to bring it up. If ever that silly old man comes interfering here again with his umbrella, a symbol of peace in Germany, I'll kick him downstairs and jump on his stomach in front of the photographers. Thank God we have no umbrella politicians in this country, said Hitler. That's all you need to know about both Chamberlain and Hitler. And then this is Chamberlain coming back and just telling people, look, I've kept us out of the war. I've kept us safe. Okay. Peace is a victory for all mankind. And now let us go back to our own affairs. We have had enough of those menaces conjured up from the continent to confuse us. Again, even England, to a lesser extent than the United States, because it's right there. But even England has always seen themselves as removed from the continent. You know, England's a part of Europe, but not part of continental Europe. England has always seen itself as something different. You know, it's sort of as a oversimplistic way of looking at it. You know, when the euro is introduced, you know, you could, when the European currency, when the euro was introduced as currency for the European Union, you could decide if you wanted it or not. And England said no. England kept the pound. One, it's very British, and two, if it's your own currency, then you can control its value a little better than the euro. Anyway, we'll get to that. We have achieved peace for our time, is what he thought. This is 1938, by the way. 38. You were given the choice between war and dishonor. You chose dishonor, and you will have war. Winston Churchill. The Munich conference marked a turning point in European history. This now made Hitler more confident than ever before. In 1939, after annexing the Sudetenland, this squiggly line here, and then he took all of Czechoslovakia, and then he demanded territory from Poland. Britain and France promised to fight should he invade Poland. Germany will either be a world power or there will be no Germany. And now we're on the eve of World War II. So there you have it. That was our little lesson for today. That was, hey, Fish Ruth, what's up? Any questions, anybody, about what we talked about any of the information? Again, when you get these notes, I know that each one is unique and or sort of cut out, but what might not be a bad idea to kind of mind map. Okay, so here's the rise of the fascists and what was going. See if you can connect everything. Well, World War I to this. And then if you really had time, then, I mean, it would just be to make one huge mind map and connect everything. That's probably going to be my review moving forward in the history of this course when we teach it again. But any questions about that? Anything you didn't know? Anything that doesn't quite make sense? Ask. I'll post this in a little bit in case you missed something. This wasn't that difficult. So tomorrow's World War II. So, hey, something we've heard of. And then tomorrow night, I'm going to record the introduction to the Cold War, which is what it is, because the Cold War, a larger lecture on the Cold War is in Unit 8. So that's all for today. Any questions? Anybody?
Does that mean we finish this unit on tomorrow?
Thursday night, yeah. This unit is just mainly the two wars. Unit 8 it's probably gonna be 2 weeks because that looks at the rise of that looks at the Cold War. It also looks at post World War II, all the decolonization in Southeast Asia, the decolonization in Africa, and all that independent stuff and that mess. The westernization and what goes on in Southwest Asia, like the Israel-Palestine thing, like all of that is this unit. And then the last unit is really big picture stuff, sort of like the Brave, like not Brave New World, but the idea of just the future and globalization and the global economy and environment is much bigger picture to end the unit. So that's where we're going. But yeah, this is a pretty quick unit. Anything else? Also, remember, if you're confused, there are 2 different assignments for the review activity. One's if you're doing the shower curtain, and one is if you're doing the Google site. And if you have another way to do it and want to run it by me that's equally creative and has all that stuff in it, I'm open to that as well. What else? I think I have all 3 of the final KCIs up. I don't know if I released them yet. I think I have them released. 7 should open up. I should have opened up yesterday. If it didn't, let me know. I spent this morning grading. Let me stop recording. I spent this morning grading 1st and 4th period.